and welcome to Talking Hoosier Baseball. My name is Chris Feeny, IUBase.com. I'm here with Cass from IUBase.com and Zach Horwitz, our IUBase.com writer. We're recording this on, what is it now, February 10th, 2025. 4 days to go till opening day. This is our part 2 preview. If you wanted to check out part 1, you could just go right back in the archives and do part 1. We did want to split it in half because, there's so many positions and so much to talk about. But obviously, articles go on the site, and Zach killed the infield preview. He also did an outfield preview. So he's going to talk a little bit about the outfield, to start us off tonight.
Yeah, so first of all, the outfield group is very different than last season. They lost Carter Matheson and Nick Mitchell, two reliable lefty bats in the order, two good defensive players. Obviously, Matheson played the bulk of center field, so someone's going to fill that up. But I think it'll be Devin Taylor. Everyone knows Devin Taylor if you're a college baseball fan this season. So the preseason buzz has just been crazy for this kid. The projected first round pick would be the first for Indiana since Kyle Schwarber in 2014. But right now, Devin Taylor seems to us as the only Hoosier to lock down the outfield position. Mercer talked about Devin Taylor being in the spotlight from such a young age in high school and even travel ball. He was always a big decorated player. So Devin Taylor, he hit 357 last season, just really incredible numbers. 37 walks as well. I think that's really going to go up this season. And that's really going to depend on guys to hit behind him. We'll talk a little later more about the rest of the lineup, but Devin Taylor should be in the leadoff spot of Mercer's lineup. He was named to the preseason Golden Spikes Award preseason watch list, which is the most prominent award in all of college baseball. And that's his second time being named to the preseason honor, which is the most in IU history. He was named a unanimous preseason All-American and the Big Ten Player of the Year by all three of the major news outlets, which is D1 Baseball, Baseball America, and Perfect Game. So really highly coveted player, Devin Taylor. Hopefully he has a big year and can be drafted in the first round and be the first Hoosier since Schwarber. So then going on to the next guy, I really am big on Hogan Denny this season. Talked about him a little in the infield preview. He was kind of the third catcher on the depth chart, but we spoke to him at Media Day about a week ago, and he is going to see time in the outfield this season or at the designated hitter spot. He is an Indiana native, and he's wanted to stay close to home. The coaching staff and playing for the state he grew up in is the reason why he's here. He hit 472 in high school. We know he has pop in his bat and a really athletic kid. He played 3 sports in high school: basketball, football, and baseball as well. So Denny's bat will get involved pretty early in his freshman season, mainly in the outfield. So in his first glance, I would assume that he would be in one of those 2 corner outfield spots. So Taylor and Denny should be checked off, and now here's one that you don't really know where they're going to go. Tyler DiMartino is the next guy I'd bring up. And I wrote in the article that he's probably the biggest wild card of the group. He transferred over from Xavier and didn't really play much last season. He was injured pretty early in March. So he was awarded a medical red shirt. He'll be back for his 6th season of college baseball. So that would provide some experience for Indiana. He played 136 games over 3 years. So really a big player for Xavier. In his redshirt junior season, he hit 255 with 10 home runs, and he was hitting in the cleanup spot, so didn't really get too many pitches. But now being in the Big Ten's best offense that happens to be Indiana, I think he'll get some more pitches to hit. So if Devin Taylor plays the bulk of center field, he could be an outfield spot, but he also has played 44 games in center field over with the Musketeers. So then another returner that we have is Andrew Wiggins. Didn't have too big of an impact. He had a little stretch in the season where he was getting playing time and then was injured and saw kind of 2 weeks in between at bats and kind of derailed his season a bit. He started 14 games with 13 of those in the DH spot, so didn't really play much in the field. I hope that he made some strides in the offseason that he could get a chance in the outfield. But at the plate, we've seen the power. He can really swing it, but his strikeout rate was around 25%. If you can get that down, Wiggins should get some at-bats this season. There's 2 guys to go, one transfer and one freshman. From Louisville is Corbin Dickerson. He played in 21 games with Louisville last year and only started one of those. He was 4 for 17 at the plate in his redshirt freshman season, so still a young player. But we'll see if he really gets a chance early on. But it's really a crapshoot with this outfield right now. There's an open holes outside of Devin Taylor. Another guy is a freshman, Cole Decker. We've heard another in-state prospect from Evansville North. He led his team to a state title. He hit 400 in his senior season. And when we talked to Mercer the first time around, he was talking about some of these young guys being able to play the position at a young age. And Cole Decker was a part of that conversation. So in the crowded group, Decker could get in there, maybe in a substitution role. We've seen him do it a lot with Morgan Colopy, who's now with the program. He's not on the team anymore, but we saw Colopy, and Sam Murison was another guy he'd put in as a defensive replacement with a lead late in games. So I think for both Dickerson and Decker, that could be their role this upcoming season. But we'll find out a little more. Only 4 days from when we're recording this till we see the first lineup. And I think outside of Devin Taylor, we don't really know. So there's some question marks. Excited to see that. But you can read the rest of the article on iubase.com. The infield one, you scroll down a little bit, and now the outfield. No pitching one. That's a little, we'll talk about that today in the podcast. But I'll move it over to Chris now with only 4 days to go till the season. I know Chris previewed 2 of our opening opponents.
Thanks, Zach. And just to chime in on the outfield, I really think there's going to be plenty of innings to go around, like you said. I would probably say Hogan Denny is going to be out there. I think we're going to be playing with that third spot a little bit more, to see who takes that. And like you said, with all those choices, and everybody has different skills, whether it's one guy's going to be more offensive, one's more defense. Coach Mercer is going to have quite the puzzle to put together outside of Ifield, Devin, and Hogan Denny. We'll see. Speaking of the outfield, the next time the team takes the field for a real game will be in Surprise, Arizona. We got the full weekend. It's a 4-game set. And the first one, the Friday nighter, our home opener, is against not our home opener. Our season opener is against UNLV. They were 6th in the Mountain West last season. They were 26-26, 12-18 in the conference. This year they were picked to finish 4th in their conference by the coaches. They did receive 1 first-place vote. And you're not allowed to vote for yourself, so they didn't vote for that for them. Somebody else picked them to finish 1st in the conference. So, maybe they, somebody knows something we don't. But you know how we're going to hope. We're going to hope they have a great season because we're playing them twice. So we'll beat them, and they can go on to win their conference later and help out the RPI or whatever the case. Let's see. Fresno State was the team picked to win the Mountain West. So we'll see how that goes. Some names to look at. Paul Myro, the 4th. He was picked all Mountain West, preseason. He was pretty much the only player to do that, to get for the all-conference team. He's a shortstop, so that's the name that we'll look for when he comes up. They had a stud pitcher last year, but he's not on the team anymore. He got drafted by the Blue Jays, Austin Cates. The pitching's kind of up in the air from what I'm understanding. 2 guys that are coming back, Sam Simon and Carson Lowe, seem to be guys who might pitch against us somewhere in those first 4 to start. But, their ERAs are in the 6s and the 7s. So these aren't arms that I think we would have to, really we're facing that guy type of thing. But, we'll have to see. They also have a real good leadoff hitter, JP Heft. He was hit 328 last year. He plays second base, and he also DHs, but he's always at that top of the order. He's got some legs. He can get contact. Just a couple of things that I noticed from looking at the stats from last year. What I did also, too, they have 23 new players, and only 3 of them are freshmen that are coming in. So they got a bunch of transfers. They must have really hit the portal. So I don't know if they even know what they have yet, right? They don't have a ton coming back. It's probably up in the air season for them just to kind of figure out what they're going to be doing, how they're going to produce. And hey, we'll beat them twice over the weekend so that they can have a great year. Let's see. Some MLB alum from UNLV, Matt Williams, Cecil Fielder, and Bip Roberts. I did not know that. Looking them up. And if you're at the games, okay, you might run into a couple of alumni from UNLV. Jimmy Kimmel, Guy Fieri. Either one of them might be at the game watching their alumni team play. You never know. Now, again, that's the first game and the last game. The second game is against Xavier. So that's Saturday night, 7 p.m. our time, Eastern time. This is a whole different story. Okay, Xavier's, they can play. They finished second in the Big East last year, 30-27, 12-9 in a conference. And the Big East is a pretty good conference. UConn's making supers. And some people, looking at Xavier, especially D1 baseballs, they picked him second, but they said they wouldn't be surprised if they won the conference, especially if they come out of the conference tournament, maybe making it that way. Luke Hammond is a name to look at for Xavier, senior third baseman. Connor Mish, a junior DH. And the guy D1 really likes and actually picked for player of the year in the conference is Aiden Anderson, an outfielder. So those are 3 names to look at for Xavier. So they were the 4 seed in their tourney. They beat UConn last year in the conference tournament, but then they lost the next 2 games to the Red Storm and Georgetown. So we have played them quite a bit since 2006. Whether it's a series, I know we hosted a series a while back against them. I think, who was it? Was it Tony Butler led off the game and hit a home run, I think, and we won 1-0. For some reason, I remember that. Is that right?
I think so. They were also the team with the bullpen snowman the very first year of the BART.
That's the first game I ever went to.
Yep.
That's right. Xavier played that game. And that's when they asked people to come shovel off the snow, right? And everything. I had my daughter. I couldn't go. I would have went. That would have been fun. But yeah, Xavier had a snowman in the bullpen. Since 2006, we're 13-5 against them. The last series we played against, though, they did get us at the BART 3-1. It was a 4-gamer. So that's something to look at. The last game we played against them was last year. We won 8-6. So, we do have some history with this team. And they're a good squad. There should be a good matchup. As far as their pitching, the D1 preview, I can't say I figured this out on my own, but the D1 preview explained that the starters, their main starters, which were Nick Boyle, Luke Hoskins, and Logan Schmidt, are actually going to be all going to the back of the bullpen this year. So they were good starters for them, but they really only got pushed into that position because of injury. So now they're going to be the back of the bullpen. And they got two nice guys, Jake Hooker and Ryan Peach. Both throw 95, 96. Both have good sliders. They said Hooker has that 12-6 breaker. So I don't know which one is going to pitch against us. I would assume one of them would start against us and one of them against Oregon State. I don't know how they're going to pick their poison and how they're going to do that. But, yeah, Saturday night is the real kickoff, I would think, against a better opponent. Not that we need to overlook anybody. We learned that last year. But, yeah, Saturday night should be something. And then when we get to Sunday, Cass is going to talk about our opponent, Oregon State.
Yes. Although I am going to add one thing that either you missed or I didn't hear you say with Xavier. There is the direct IU connection. Billy O'Connor, their coach, started his collegiate career at Indiana before finishing at Xavier.
No, I definitely didn't mention that. I didn't even know that.
And his younger brother, Tim, played at IU as well.
Wait, the Tim O'Connor that was on that 14-15 team?
Yes.
16?
Yeah.
Oh, I remember Tim. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's his brother.
That's his brother's brother. Okay.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yep.
And I did try to find some Xavier alum that were notable, but there weren't very many.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I figured I'd throw that in.
That's right there. Maybe Tim O'Connor will be there.
He
and
could
those
be.
of us who've been following Hoosier baseball a while might see Tim. Great call, Cass.
Yes. But now looking at Oregon State, this one's the big one of the weekend. Xavier is good and has been pretty consistently good for the last few years. Oregon State is another thing entirely. They were 45-16 last year, hosted and won a regional over UC Irvine, Tulane, and Nichols. They did lose in the Super Regional at Kentucky, 2-0. But they've made it to 7 straight regionals. They last made it to the College World Series in 2018. This is a very experienced team. Their projected lineup is almost all juniors and seniors. But they did just lose an historically great player in Travis Bazzana as the first overall pick in the draft last year. So that's some stuff they're going to have to make up on the offensive side in particular. The pitching will probably be pretty solid, pretty decent by the end of the year, but it might not be super overwhelming week 1 because there's lots of guys who are going to likely be new to their roles. first time being a weekend starter. First time they did also lose their very good closer from last year, who had a 1.93 ERA and 13 saves. New guys are in new roles, and it might not be the right role for them, come to find out. So while their guys do have solid stuff, it may or may not be on display week 1. We'll likely be facing a younger arm. Odds are their veteran starter guy will probably go Friday, unless they specifically save him. I don't think they'd want to save him for Sunday, but you never know. We could be seeing Dax Whitney, who's a freshman. I think highest odds are probably on Eric Segura, who's a sophomore. Last year, he had a 6-1 record in 69 and a third innings with a 4.93 ERA. He's pretty strikeout heavy with 75 Ks last year to 28 walks. The third guy kind of in that mix to potentially be the starter we face is Ethan Kleinschmidt, who's a sophomore transfer from Lynn Benton Community College. He was also a high strikeout guy there, but that sometimes doesn't transfer immediately over to high-level D1 in the first week. Another pitcher to keep an eye on is the guy who's probably going to be stepping in as closer, or at the very least a back-end guy. We heard 6th-year senior earlier. Oregon State has a 7th-year senior, Joey Munt. He's a righty. Last year had a 2.0 record in just over 30 innings of work with a 2.67 ERA. 24 appearances, none of them were starts. He is very much a bullpen guy. He had 33 strikeouts compared to 12 walks, so he doesn't walk anybody all that much. But he's not a super heavy strikeout guy either. On the offensive side, they should have solid hitting and hitting for power. One thing to note is that their lineup is very righty dominant. They only in their projected lineup, they only have 2 lefty bats. Now they're fairly solid lefty bats, but they only have 2 projected lefty bats in their starting lineup. The big names to watch on the pitching and fielding side, first guy on the list, and he's a transfer from Washington, is Ava Arquette, who's a junior. He's 6'4", and he's a shortstop. Yeah, shortstop. That's one of the taller shortstops I've seen in quite some time, possibly since I saw Evan Bell playing shortstop in one of the alumni games a few years ago. Like that's a pretty tall shortstop. Last year he hit .325 with 14 doubles and 12 home runs, and even though he's 6'4", he still had 6 stolen bases. So the guy to watch for from a power perspective is Gavin Turley, also a junior. He hit 19 home runs last year. And then their likely leadoff guy, Trent Caraway, he's the young guy in the projected lineup. He's a sophomore, but he missed 44 games due to injury last year. He tends to have a pretty aggressive approach. Well, now we have some mailbag questions. Mark Land submitted 2 questions. Chris will address this one with some notes from Carl. So the question is, both Denny and Hanley were very good high school pitchers. Has there been any talk of them being 2-way players?
Thanks, Cass. And yeah, obviously, as you started this podcast, you were greeted by someone a little different, myself instead of Carl. He's out doing a project with Aaron Fitt and Kendall Rogers, so he couldn't make it tonight. But we're going to do our best, to hold down the fort for him as we've been doing. Now, he did, though, want to write back Mark. So I have his notes that I'm going to address the answer for Mark's question. And just to touch on quick, he wrote, "Great question, Mark. I had this on my list for the media sessions, but given how important the overall pitching questions have been, I haven't gotten to it yet." Carl mentioned that he did ask about pitching depth, and those names did not come up. I mean, me and Zach were there with him, and we could vouch. We haven't heard the names brought up yet for for them being two-way players. Something else Carl pointed out is if you look back at Mercer's 6 seasons so far, there's only been one true two-way player, and that was Matt Lloyd. And he certainly was a two-wayer. 2019, who he was already well established before Coach Mercer got here. So that's a good point. He was already doing it with Coach Lemonis. Now, let's see what he's got here. A few have played both. Grant, Cass, can you help me with that?
Machaki.
Grant Machaki started 2020 as a first baseman. Then he was injured, and then he became a bullpen arm. I think he was closing at some point, wasn't he, if I remember?
I think so. Or back end.
Yeah. And then Craig Goho was a DH at Houston. He was advertised, and he was a two-way player there. And he established himself definitely with us as a key bullpen arm. So it's not that Coach hasn't done it. Let's see. Something else here. Jason Oliver debuted last season on the mound, but only recorded 1 out against Arizona and went on to become the team's regular second baseman. Okay. He notes he haven't heard anything more about Oliver's pitching, but there is a rumor that he's got a good knuckleball. So there's that. To this point, I think the intensity of the development program has not allowed for players to really do both well enough to see time in games. That being said, the roster count drops to 34 players in 2026. So he points out that he wouldn't rule out Hanley and Denny maybe getting back into pitching, because then we're going to have less players. So having a two-way guy then is very important. It's more valuable. Let's see. Pitching development in the coming fall, hopes of taking an inning or two off the pitching staff in 26. Yeah, so Carl mentions he will definitely bring that up to Coach when he can for Mark. But, the man's busy. He's working with Aaron Fit, but he still finds time to answer Mark, which I thought was great. Mark sent in another question, and it's going to really get to a major topic that we were going to kind of roundtable anyway. So his question was, are we going to have to win every game 15-12? Is Ryan Kraft the Friday starter? He basically wanted to see where we were at in that situation. Now, I know we've been hearing a lot of names from Coach through the pressers we've been doing as far as who's going to really be the arms on the mound. He already did pretty much mention that we don't really have, 6, 7, 8 inning guys, right? He was going to look for less than that, as far as especially the beginning of the season. But if you kind of read the tea leaves and you listen to the pressers, seems real high on Cole Gilly, right? So that's another name. Gavin Siebold is on the schedule poster. So if that's not a sign that I think we're going to be really using him quite a bit as a starter, I think that really is. And then, there's other options. Another one that Coach had mentioned, who was it, Cass, that's coming back from Tommy John?
Grable, probably.
Yes. He mentioned Grable. And he's saying he was even way further ahead than somebody would normally be that has already had TJ. But he's like, whoa, we got to slow him down. He's doing so good. So those were 3 names I've definitely heard Coach discuss as far as starters. And I wouldn't, I know, Zach, you've been to all the pressers. What's your vibe from what you've been hearing as far as who, pitch in wise and then might be starting?
Yeah, the first part of Mark's question is, are we going to have to win every game 15-12?
Yeah.
So the answer to that, I think this year is no. There seems to be more depth than there has been in years. And if you look back to last year, they had Connor Foley and Ty Bothwell, who were the 2 starters, and then someone else on Sunday. It was like a reliever. It was just a whole game of different pitchers. But this year, we've heard from Mercer himself, Gavin Siebold is probably the Friday night starter, and Cole Gilly should be that second guy. And then the third one is up for grabs, Ryan Kraft, Aiden Decker-Petty, and Jackson Yarberry. Yarberry transferred from St. Louis. And then Ben Grable, you brought up before that. Grable would have been a starter last season. Mercer said that he's throwing from 93 to 95 miles per hour, like a 3-pitch mix, and he should be a multi-inning closer option with the potential of starting. Also, Clayton Weisheight. So all these, I should bring up these guys that are going to start. Cole Gilly, transfer from Indiana State, Gavin Siebold from Southern Indiana, along with Clayton Weisheight, who's also from Southern Indiana. So these guys are coming in to bring in good innings to start the game. They also have Drew Burr from last season. Jacob Vogel ate up a lot of innings as well. So I think that the team will not have to strive to limit the runs as much as last year. There's guys going to eat up more innings. There's more depth and more guys to go to. So that's that on that front. Cass, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, so for me, again, I always go back to the numbers. I'm a data girl. Uh, and looking at what's returning versus what's leaving. You guys kind of mentioned it, like Connor Foley and Ty Bothwell are incredibly hard to replace. In fact, between the two of them, just the two of them out of those who have left, they have they had as many strikeouts as everybody returning combined. Those who have left had 36 wild pitches on the year last year, while those returning had 15, which is still higher than we want it to be. Those who have left accounted for more than just over 360 innings of work. Those returning, not counting guys like Ben Grable who couldn't pitch because of injury, guys returning pitched 162 innings. So that's something to know. That's a lot of, that we're looking at somewhere in the ballpark of 360 innings to make up. Those have to come from somewhere. And so that to me is the big thing to watching the command and seeing who can stretch a little bit. We've seen guys, Kraft at times, less so last year, but Kraft at times has been able to stretch and eat more innings occasionally. Aiden Decker-Petty, I think, probably is capable of doing so. The returners and those who left really didn't give up too much by way of hits, and they were almost equal in the percent of hits that went for extra bases. So that's a good thing. If you're going to have command issues, you can't be giving up a lot of extra base hits.
Sounds like coach also is having guys, or maybe it's Glant who started this as far as getting these guys throwing more innings, throwing more pitches, even as they've come off the Christmas break. Coach mentioned that when we talked to him last time, and it's like maybe these guys can lengthen out more. Like you're saying, who are they? We don't know, but if a guy can go 4 or 5 innings as a starter, that's think what we had last year.
Yeah,
we put this thing together. We were lucky if we had that. You mentioned the with Foley and Ty, how different they were. I'm sure they're going to try to set something up like that as well. I've noticed that through his time he's got here. He likes really changing up the way guys throw and matching up day after day. Or like the first guy that comes in the pen being totally different than the starter. So these are things that might define somebody's role.
Yeah.
But we didn't know, what we had last year at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we had some guys really step up. I would think if they're already throwing more pitches now this spring training, however you want to call it, fall ball-ish, Christmas break-ish, they're going to be more ready, right? Because they're going to be able to throw more innings right off the gate. Yeah. And there's a lot, we got 5 games in 6 days just starting this thing. They only have that Tuesday off between the 4 neutral games and then the home opener at the Bar.
Yeah. I also asked Mercer. I remember a year ago today, he was always harping on he wants 6 runs or less from his pitching staff. And they actually had a 6.2 ERA as a team last season, which was 9th in the Big Ten. So not great. And they allowed a lot of home runs. It was the most in the conference. But I think now they have more arms to go to. And I also wanted to bring up this weekend, obviously, you're playing 4 games with the biggest game, Oregon State, who's the number 7th ranked team in the country. You really want to win that for the metrics. Do they save a guy like Gilly or Siebold, who are your top 2 starters, for that game and trot somebody out for opening day that usually wouldn't be like your Friday night starter, your ace of the staff? So I really wonder what they're going to do with that. Maybe Ryan Kraft. I wanted to bring him up in total. Kraft was fantastic in 2023, and then last season just kind of fell off a bit. He had over 70 ERA in 26 innings, and he went to fall ball this year and was really incredible. I think it was the Northwoods League. He played really, really well. So I'd like to see Kraft get in there. And Cass, I know I was listening to your Oregon State preview that they're a big right-handed hitting group. So maybe Gilly or Siebold can pitch that Sunday game.
Yeah.
I would think that's a lock, Zach. I wouldn't even. I mean, I would assume that. The way we know how Coach thinks and when he schedules, and I would think for sure we're going to see them on Sunday. I would think it's going to be a veteran. Not that we have that many veterans, but I would think it's a veteran for Friday. Maybe even Kraft. I mean, I don't know. You don't know how he's going to set it up, but I know this staff wants to get Sunday. You nailed it, Zach. Definitely.
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, especially with the next week being another round robin style tournament with Northwestern, Fordham, and Harvard, it does give the opportunity if you pitch Gilly or Siebold on Sunday, next week you can move them up to Saturday, and then the next week they're ready to go for Friday. You can pretty easily do that without too much concern of pairing up with another Friday ace.
Yeah, and to go on that, Mercer was talking to us the last time we saw him that he hopes that there's guys that can pitch on Friday and there can be a turnaround. They pitch again on the Monday against UNLV again. So that would probably be more of a bullpen game, I would think. I would like to see Ben Grable, if they're really big on him, to end the games towards the back half of the bullpen, if he could pitch that first game and then again on Monday. I know he's coming back from an injury, but they really need to stretch out these guys. There's more depth than there has been in the last few seasons, and we'll see that this coming weekend.
Might even get an idea of who he's looking at to close out games, because I've always been a prominent, I want a closer, I want a ninth inning guy, but really, they've just whoever's hot that day, like who can finish the last 3 innings. Well, they'll bring somebody in for the last 2 innings, so we can kind of see, what they're looking at. I know Vogel pretty much had locked that down at the end of last year, and he was money. And we didn't even see that guy coming out of nowhere. Yeah. It's a perfect segue to what we're going to be doing next with the X Factor stuff. We put something together that we're all going to pick our like X Factor guy, like our out of nowhere guy, or a guy who's off the radar. And Vogel last year is a perfect example of that as an arm, right? We didn't know that we had that. Jason Oliver would have been, what was he, the third string second baseman to start the season? Yeah. I'm trying to think. Jake Stadler, I think he had one hit the year before. Like, who knew he was going to be such a, important piece of the puzzle? So we're going to make our picks for X Factor before we say goodnight. Now, we drew straw. No, we didn't. Carl told us to go first, second, and third. Cass is going to go first, so she's got the gamut. We were trying not to double up, so we'll all come up with one pick for our X Factor. Pick to click, however you want to call it, and it's obviously everybody can pick Devin Taylor, right? Everybody could pick, Gilly or Siebold, the guys we know we're going to throw. We're trying to go off the radar a little bit, and let's see what Cass gets with us for our first pick.
If he stays healthy, I think could be big for this pitching staff. He showed some solid bits last season before injury. I'm going with Seth Bennis because I think he could have some pretty solid stuff if he can stay healthy. And I think even if nothing else, given that we don't necessarily have the guy who can go 6, 7, 8 innings to start a game, I think the guy who can eat 3, 4, 5 innings in relief would be pretty important. And I think Bennis could be that guy. Might not be right away, but by the end of the season, I think Bennis could be one of those.
What do you think, Zach? What about a pick for you?
All right, so I'll give you 2 here. One, I'll be brief because it's hard not to pick Jake Hanley. We know he's going to be the first baseman, but Chris, you and I saw him multiple times. The first time we saw him, he walked in and did a press conference with us. He's just a mature kid. You look at him; he's 6'6", and then the next time we were out there, he was doing scoops at first base, just playing the position. I don't think we saw a single ball get by him. So,
not one.
Yeah, and we've also heard from Jason Oliver that same day that there's just a lot of confidence throwing the ball from the infield to a guy that has such a big frame. And I think Hanley's bat, also a 6'6" lefty, I think he will be in the top half of the lineup. And if they're pitching around Devin Taylor with guys on base, I think Hanley's the guy to go to. And then I'll also give another one on the mound. I'm looking at Jackson Yarberry, the transfer from St. Louis. He's now a sophomore. He was 6-3 in his first collegiate season. He made 19 appearances and 4 starts. Mercer named him as one of the guys that could start. I really think he'll be the midweek guy. If I had to take a guess, I think he's the midweek guy. He pitched 42 innings last year. I think they can stretch him out, and he'll be one of the starters. So Jackson Yarberry is my pick on the mound for a guy that comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, that one would definitely, because we don't know a lot about him. I mean, he throws gas from what I've heard, and from some of the notes that we've gotten from folks that have been in practices and stuff. We're talking a 95-mile-an-hour arm, right? Mm-hmm. So that would definitely fit the mold if he can do what he has to do. For me, maybe it's because I saw him play at that fall ball game at Louisville, but I'm going to go to Corbin Dickerson. He was just very impressive, and I know we're hearing he might not have the bat, and maybe right now. But the way this guy was playing outfield, just give me some more of that. Like, he reminded me of like when I first saw Logan Kaleta play for us when he came over. Trying to think like Gorski, the way Gorski would cover ground out there, or Didolo. Like, these are guys that, I mean, just the ground he was covering, the plays he was making. And he's obviously got legs, so maybe he bunts, maybe he gets on base, maybe he's more of a slap hitter. But honestly, he hit for the cycle. The natural cycle that fall. So Dickerson's going to be my pick as an X factor. I hope he gets the playing time to be able to show himself, what he's made of and what he can do. I think Zach, you mentioned it before in the preview, right? Like, he barely played last year, whatever. Maybe even the past 2 years, I don't think he played that much.
Yeah, he didn't play much. And if I had to guess, I don't think he'll start right away. Also, with the first weekend being one of the games is Xavier, and that's where Tyler DiMartino came from. I think they could give him a shot to play against his former team, and then maybe give Corbin Dickerson a chance as the year progresses.
Let him get out there, right? I do like that. We got the scoop on some of these Xavier pitchers, which is good. Mm-hmm. It's always nice to have that guy in the dugout who knows the other team, so that could be a plus. I mean, we've gone over a bunch of stuff. Something I wanted to point out, and I don't know when you'll be listening to this or when we're able to record the next one on Monday, the home opener is free. Okay. That Wednesday game against Purdue Fort Wayne, there is no tickets. The first 3 midweek games, the February games, whatever you want to call them, there's no ticket price. You don't just show up, have fun, come on over. Students are free anyway. I know that's the case, but I just want to point that out. They're not charging for the first 3 home games. So maybe you don't hear next week's pod in time for that Wednesday start. It's a 4:00 start. I would hope that we can keep it that way so we can get some more people there. I know sometimes they move the times up because of weather, but really I think you're going to get the most sun at 4:00 anyway, right? Isn't that how Indiana works?
And regardless, probably bundle up. It's looking to be a bit chilly.
Bit chilly on that Wednesday?
Yeah, bit chilly, like a low that day of 16. At the moment.
They won't even play then. Oh, man. Well, we'll see what happens.
You never know. I never trust the forecast this far out. So, but this time of year, it's a crapshoot anyway with temperatures in mid-February.
Definitely. The opening one we had a couple of years back was beautiful. It was almost pushing 60 degrees that day.
Yep.
We put like 2,500 in the seats. That was great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've pretty much touched on everything we wanted to hit for this week. So we'll just wrap this up. I want to thank you for listening to Talking Hoosier Baseball. You can follow us on Twitter or X on IUBase17, Instagram at IUBase, Facebook group, the hashtag IUBase Facebook group if you want to follow that way.
Blue Sky now.
What's up?
Blue Sky now too.
Oh, Blue Sky. We're on that too now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Carl got that set up, I think.
Nice. Check us out there. Lots of different options. But if you want to go old school and simple, just type in iubase.com into the search bar. The website will be there. So lots of different options. So look forward to, bringing people some information that we can pick up and covering the games. And, we have a good time doing it. And it seems like, it's definitely needed. And even though the IU media has gotten a lot better lately, and I definitely appreciate that, they make our job a lot less. Zach, welcome back for this year. And for Zach, for Cass, and myself, we'll wrap this one up, and we'll see you at the bar.